Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks question mark kicks.
Just like that, we're back and we're set for UFC 295. As always, one half of your host and duo, Craig Allen, Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials, Matt Allen FNP. To all of you who served, happy Remembrance Day. I guess it's not a happy celebration, but Remembrance Day nonetheless here in Canada. Veterans Day in the States as well, so November 11th. It is the holiday, so thank you for your service as always. Matt, we have a big time card to break down today. When we look at it, I mean, 295, two title fights up at the top. One's an interim title fight, and usually people are actually negative about interim title fights, but this one feels deserved. Of course, these two were supposed to match up back in 2021. It's Pavlovich taking on Tom Aspinall. Over there in the comment section, a lot of people really excited about these fights as well. Blue Eye Life, Akashdeep. We got Raul G, Eric Cote as well. MMA Millionaire.
What's up, guys?
Prince Vegeta's son, and I'll do my best to head on over there in the chat. I gotta be honest with everybody. I've been wearing my glasses all day, and when you take them off to do the show so you don't get the big circles in my eyes, it's kind of hard to read, but I'm going to do my very best with it. And I don't know if people know that either. Like, that's a little bit of inside the looking glass that I don't actually have on. But on Sundays, I wear my glasses all day to do all the tape study, and then I take them off and trying to read the Tapology pick percentages sometimes. Yeah, maybe sometimes I do what I can see closely. But when it does come down to this one, the folks are excited about it. I know you're excited about it. There's a lot of fights on this card. For a second week in a row, it's a good darn thing that we do this show, but it's a second good darn thing that people didn't steal copper out of the wires so we could actually go live for it, unlike last week. But the reason why it's a good thing that we make the show is because there are a few weight misses and a fight that we assumed last Sunday when we taped was going to be a bantamweight. It's a catch weight of 138 pounds because I think one of those guys has a hard time making the weight, even though he made it successfully with the hoop this week. So, Matt, again, you're excited about it. Well, Michael Bouchard is too. All caps saying, let's get into it. Shout out the Allen boys.
Well, it's a really fun card that we do have ahead of us, and I agree with you 100%. We normally do see a lot of negativity surrounding interim title fights, but it is one of those rare situations where you kind of understand what you're going into, right? There's a big money fight on the horizon. The UFC wants to cash out on that, and you guys are going to be next in line. Right now, is the winner of this fight going to fight either John Jones or Stipe next? Probably not. If we're all being completely honest, I can just see them promoting this to the regular title and then going from there, making them defend it more and more. But Pavlovich and Aspinall have both been on extremely impressive runs, and other than a really bad knee injury for Aspinall, he's been pretty squeaky clean as of late, so I'm really excited for that fight because it's one of those matchups where the name value might not be as high as the original fight, but the fight itself is going to deliver without a doubt in my mind.
Well, and the fans, you guys hit it up there in the YouTube community tab, so I'll throw it to the fight of the night screen. The first one, you folks picked this one, Yuri Prochazka taking on Alex Pereira. Prochazka coming back from that crazy shoulder injury that he had, getting ready for UFC 282. He was out of that bout. Blachowicz got to take on Ankalaev. It was a draw, so then you had Teixeira and Jamall Hill, and they're hanging out, and Jamall Hill's got something between his lips that he's ripping on, and Glover's standing looking like a lumberjack or a farmer from rural New Brunswick. But when it does come down to this fight, Matt, people are excited about it. Prochazka, a fight of the year in 2022. See, it's been a while. That was his last fight. And Pereira coming in, beating Blachowicz by split decision, getting this opportunity at a second belt in the second division in the UFC.
I think this is an incredible fight because Yuri was that kind of next new toy at 205, right? It had been a while since we had a really exciting contender just come out of nowhere. And not that Yuri came out of nowhere, right? A lot of people were familiar with his work over in Ryzen before he came to the UFC. But still, just to have him in the organization finally and for him to look as good as he has, I'm really excited for this matchup because for Pereira, he looks so good at 185. He had that close fight with Jan his last time out, but Jan's a pretty tough out for pretty much anybody in the UFC, and I think this could be a fun fight because for as hittable as Yuri is, he responds like few fighters can. He can come in there with a big flurry, and we saw it the last time out, right? Who would have ever thought Yuri would have got a submission win over Glover? And I understand he damaged Glover a lot before the submission win, but that was really nice to see some just kind of additional fight IQ out of Yuri, who could have lost that fight if he didn't get the stop.
You won't get the Ferris Bueller video in this one, but yeah, for Yuri Prochazka, I mean, you can see it. They get the 2015 Grand Prix up in the corner of the room. The second pick that you guys went with, Matt, the steamroller Frivola taking on Benoit Saint-Denis. And again, I have a weird I think Benoit Saint-Denis is going to steamroll the steamroller in this fight. I don't think it's going to be all that close, but Matt Frivola has had this absolute power surge. His last 3 fights, all first-round finishes. Saint-Denis looking to make it a 5th straight win in a row. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. The people out there, Matt, it's reading, it's listening, but UFC 296 is the last card of the year. We got to figure out who's the winner is at that point. Maybe we'll do a sidekicks for that one too. But when it does come down to this fight, Matt, again, a lot of people voted on this and they're excited about the fight.
I agree with you in the prediction that I do think Saint-Denis is going to win this fight, but just when you look at what Matt Frivola does so well, I do think he's going to be able to counter a lot of what Saint-Denis could steamroll him with, because let's say Saint-Denis does just put on the wrestling shoes and try to get Matt Frivola down, well, that's easier said than done. Matt Frivola is a pretty good defensive wrestler, and if Frivola can hit Saint-Denis, especially early on in the fight, and really make him feel some of that early power, even without a knockout, I think it will make it much more competitive as it goes down the stretch. Didn't think this would be on the screen, but I'm happy it is, because I know I'm really excited for that matchup.
Yeah, fans big about this. Prince Vegeta's son, Frivola is Brenton Schauss's Burnt Pixels pick of the night.
Wow.
I picked the other guy. Listen, it could go both ways, I guess.
Is there a if you don't know, now you know fight? Because I feel like that one would be very much in contention.
Oh, they pick like the featured prelim and the co-main event. If you didn't know, get excited about it. But if this is your first time with Fight Night Picks, #kicks. We thank you. Toss a like as we rip through this card, as we always do. We start at the bottom, we get back up to the top, we flip that deck right at the end. And then we recap everything that we have said. So again, Matt, there's a reason why we do the show. It's the first fight on the prelims.
Exactly. We can get out of the way.
Jamall Emmers coming in at 147 pounds for a fight at featherweight. Going to be taking on Denis Buzukja, who did make the weight. And one of the things to note, I mean, these fights, they're at MSG, they're in New York. You look at some of the weigh-ins, it's 0.6, it's 0.8. It's not as clean as a half pound or a full pound. But when you do look at this one, I mean, for Jamall Emmers, a little bit of a bead of sweat on his chest. I wonder, could he have cut a little bit more weight? I don't know, but he did come in at 147, so he does miss weight, forfeits a portion of his purse too. Denis Buzukja, this is one of those fights, again, that a lot of the fans threw their support to Jamall Emmers, and I wonder if they kind of question that as the week has gone on.
I do worry about it a little bit as somebody who picked Jamall Emmers.
That Eska bubbling water. It'll get
wow.
You. Yikes.
Sparkling water beating the brakes off Craig right now. I am still excited for this matchup, but I feel like we say this every time Jamall Emmers has had a fight in the UFC. It's, hey, here's all the things he's really good at. But then there's always kind of that, oh, by the way, at the end of it, be it a really close fight, be it a weight miss like we have today. So it would just be nice to have a controversy-free Jamall Emmers fight, if you will, to where he goes out there, uses the totality of his skill set, shows off how well-rounded he can really be, and then gets a nice win, because I do think he is in that, maybe not 15 to 20, but he's close to that range, I'd say, in this division when you do get the best version of him. And he's proven that with close fights against really good fighters. I still have him in the matchup, but you bring up the weight miss. I was so just upset to see that he had missed weight, because I really was excited for this fight. I think it's going to be a really good one. Buzukja is just such an odd fighter, because if he is able to at least push a pace to where, okay, maybe Jamall Emmers, his cardio is affected a little bit, land some of those straight shots down the middle, and I brought it up at the start of the week, Buzukja's got a really nice front kick, and if he can land that front kick to the body of Emmers, then maybe it's going to be a really good fight.
Buzukja is an interesting guy, too, because you saw him on Contender Series twice. First time he loses to the gun, Melzik Bogdasarian, a guy whose hand issues have just continued to ruin his
fighter.
MMA career.
A pretty good fighter.
Yeah, so he went from great to pretty good.
No, I said as great came out of my mouth. I was like, that's a step too far.
I'm going to say he's an average fighter. I think that one's fair. Melzik Bogdasarian's not going to blow your socks off. So Melzik beats Denis Buzukja. Buzukja goes back to the regional scene. Fought for ROC, fought for CFFC. He comes back. He gets the win over Kaleo Romero. Super chat from MMA Millionaire.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate you for that. Thank you very much. And so when it does come down to this one, you look at it for Denis Buzukja. He wins a few fights outside of the UFC. The 3 fights, he gets a short notice call up. He misses weight himself at 146.5. He loses the decision to Sean Woodson. So I've got a little, I've got a little graphic here, and I'll bring it up when we talk about the Ricci card, a Ricci fight, which takes on Loopy Godinez on this card. Lupita Godinez's UFC career and Charles Jourdain's UFC career, it's just a bunch of, what are we doing? Charles Jourdain's won 2 fights in a row. Who do you fight? Sean Woodson. It's just the weirdest thing ever. So for Buzukja, he gets to right the ship, look for a win against Jamall Emmers. He throws those big looping shots. He does kind of give one to take one. And I think Jamall Emmers' straight shots can win him the fight, but I do worry about the weight miss in this one. And again, when you're talking about a guy that's a decent-sized favorite and he misses weight by a pound, it definitely brings up question marks. 77% of the fans have Jamall Emmers.
Still taking him.
I won't change it in this one, but it is a tricky one for sure. Plus, now you got the California guy coming across the country, misses weight. You're taking on the hometown guy, Sarah Longo's own Denis Buzukja. He's got, 2 other teammates on this card, Frivola and Sadykhov. Yeah. Could start things off well. And if the hometown advantage plays a part, again, we talk about UFC 289 back in Vancouver. The Canadians went undefeated. Maybe it's a big one for those New York fighters on this card too.
It very well could be. I still have Jamall Emmers though. Just side note, I'm so happy that there's a Terrence Ross discussion going on in the chat right now. Not a name I thought I'd see today.
When he got drafted, and I'm 95, 9th overall a number of years ago, I was so excited for Terrence Ross. He wins that slam dunk competition, but ultimately, and he's getting paid over his career. Yeah. Paid. But he's not the greatest fighter, or not the greatest basketball player. Matt, we move into the next match.
Maybe he's got wicked hands, though. Could you imagine?
Who knows? Joshua Van's going to take on Kevin Borjas. Borjas, he shaved the salad before the weigh-in, so no more red stripe in the hair.
He said Juan Soto's going to be in the lineup next year.
I would think for Borjas, maybe that's a weight thing, too. I mean, he came in at, 125.8, but if you look at his actual promotional pictures, because you got to think about it. I took this one before he had his fight. And if you go on the UFC's website today, he's got that big red streak. So he did shave the hair. Borjas coming in, the former Inca FC bantamweight champ. He won a close decision over Victor Diaz over on Contender Series, a couple months ago? It wasn't that long ago.
All, yeah.
So Borjas gets a chance against Joshua Van, the former Fury man. And on one of his Fury cards, and we can get into it, I mean, he fought on an absolutely stacked card where fighters from that one, they're on this one. So we can go through it. But for Joshua Van, gets that short notice call against Jalga Zhumagulov. He's able to just pull through, get the win round 2, round 3. And we'll see what he's able to do out there in this matchup. Because, again, when I did the tape study on Borjas, it was fun. But it left a lot to be desired because takedown defense like Swiss cheese.
That's why I have such a hard time with this fight. I think there's a version of Borjas who comes into the UFC and doesn't blow the doors off people, but let's say we do just get the best version of him to where he can be on the back foot, he's landing good shots down the middle, then he could look good in this matchup. I'll give him that credit. But you're right to bring up, it's like the positive is great, you just want to focus on that one positive, but the takedown defense really does concern me, and against a guy like Van who generates so much power up close, I think the takedown might be available for him too in some of these striking exchanges. And that's what worries me about Kevin in this one.
So, Kevin Borjas, Steve O.B., you are Kevin Borjas. Borjas, tougher competition. Borjas is better on the floor. All right, Kevin, I'll bite. Combined opponent record before he fought on Contender Series is 25-22. And then he beat 11-2 Victor Diaz. His loss includes the 13-6 Mendez. So if you the 13-6, the 25-22, it's a bad level of competition. When you're fighting on the Peruvian regional scene, you got to beat who you got to beat. Yes. We've seen, again, Daniel Marcos, Claudio Poyes in the UFC out of Peru. Not that there's been a lot of fighters, but Kevin Borjas gets an opportunity. Offensive grappling, it's not that great. His takedown defense is awful. It's terrible. But Joshua Van, as we said going into his own debut, his takedown defense isn't the greatest, and it's like he's got ants in his pants and he's just got to move so gosh darn fast in his fights. Sometimes he makes mistakes. And again, you see him smiling when he makes mistakes because, shoot, I got myself in this bad position. I got to get out of it.
I think that's a really good point, honestly, because if he does overextend at any one point, it's just going to give Borjas his opportunity to win this fight. It's going to make it that much higher because Borjas does throw good shots near the middle when he's able to bounce off that back foot. He's not going to wow you with his volume, but if he's able to land one of those counters, especially as Van is trying to engage with him, it could be a real devastating shot that could end the fight, even though I do have Van in the matchup.
Yes, Cody Ewell. The nickname is, of course, the Black Rooster. And Redline Revs, we had Manscaped sponsors for like a year and a half, bud. So yeah, we took the Manscaped money. But when it does come down to this matchup, again, Borjas does like the counter strike. He has such an odd stance because he kind of stands tall with his arms like this, but his feet are really wide. It's a really unique stance to him. It's a blend of boxing and Muay Thai. So I'm really excited about this fight. Again, we don't say, like, flyweight never die for a reason. In 2018, it seemed like the great flyweight purge. You do have Borjas as a plus 200 or thereabouts underdog. And Matt, at Fight Night Picks for the total votes in the poll, 62% going with Joshua Van. Both guys are volume strikers, though. So why are we talking about the takedowns? All right, Matt. Both of us going with Van in this one, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Unless you changed your pick.
No, I did not. So we move into the next matchup. So this is the one...
A catchweight.
Again, it's an interesting thing that we do this show. So we used to rag on it. It would happen once in a blue moon. And I mean that. Like once every, 6 months that you'd have a catchweight fight in the UFC.
Dana White hated doing it.
Dana White doesn't like catchweight fights because they don't help move anything along in the division. It's hard to seed fighters. They don't really mean anything. In 2023, catchweight fights have happened a lot. I don't necessarily like it either. And you go way back, UFC 279. That was the Hamzat, Nate Diaz, but it isn't the card. And you had the big reshuffle, and D-Rod is going up against Li Jingliang. D-Rod and Jingliang and Holland and Chimaev, and people got ranked and moved around in their respective divisions while not actually fighting in their division, in their weight class. So it was really weird to see that. When it does come down to this one, it's announced at the start of the week after videos have come out that this one is a catchweight fight of 138 pounds. John Castaneda, if you go back and watch the weigh-ins yesterday, they brought the hoop out. He weighed 137.6, Kyung 138. John Castaneda's had another catchweight fight in the UFC at 140 pounds against Daniel Willie Cat Santos of 140 pounds. He looked awesome in a round and nearly finished Willie Cat, dropping him at multiple points, and then he got finished himself in the second round. I had John Castaneda at the start of the week, Matt. Don't love that this is a catchweight fight announced during the week.
I agree with everything you just said, but I do still have him in the fight. I'm not going to switch over that, even though I do agree those are really good red flags to bring up, because how's Kyung going to win this fight if he wins? He's going to push a pace. He's probably going to wrestle. He's going to tire out John Castaneda to where Castaneda won't have enough pop on his shots to really make Kang pay for it on some of those entries. And if he is able to really make him pay with the takedowns, then I don't even think he's going to have to go 5 for 6, anything crazy, right? Just make Castaneda work. I think it's a good point to bring up because we could see Castaneda being a shell of himself as this fight does go on. But I still think on those entries, he's going to be able to land some good hooks that might make the damage at least more even as this fight goes on to where, okay, it's not a case of one guy has a lot left in the tank and the other one doesn't.
And it's always weird, again, when fighters miss weight, but they make it into the UFC. You look at John Castaneda's fight against your favorite Pitbull, Marcelo Rojo, and in that one, Castaneda looked amazing, and it was one of those fun fights, but he also had struggles with the weigh-in. So he's won missing weight, he's lost missing weight. When you do consider a fight like this, we touched on this at the start of the week, you look at it for Kyung it is the takedowns, it's a lot of the straight shots, and it's having that staying power through 3 rounds unless he himself overextends for the finish in the first round like we saw when he was taking on my guy, Rani Yahya. So I really do like this fight, and a lot of Kang fights, they end up as close decisions, so you don't want to make a decision in
because he's so active, but he is hittable, right? So the two things kind of cancel each other out, and that's what makes the fight so fun. And at his age, it is kind of surprising to see he still has decent durability, right? Like, he's not just going down from one shot. He will take quite a few and absorb those big shots. It's a really fun fight, though, and that's why I was not upset, but it's just so weird that it is a catchweight, even though I will say this, I feel like I'm more forgiving for catchweight fights than most people. If two guys who fight at 135 both struggle to do the weight cut and they agree to fight at 140, I think you still can kind of put that in the 135 conversation, as long as at some point they can still prove that they can make the weight.
Castaneda, new boxing coach. Castaneda likes to wrestle. We have a look at Fight Night Picks for the total votes on this one, and Matt, Unsurprisingly,
Wow, I like it.
51% Castaneda, 49% going with Kyung Gong. I'm going to switch my pick on question mark kicks. I'm going to go with Kyung Gong. And at the start of the week, I was on the fence about this fight. After I found out it was catch weight, I thought, okay, I will go with Kyung Gong. Even though he's closer to 37 than he is 36, and he's in the bantamweight division, I think he's got a little bit of staying power. I do like those straight shots. I like the fact that his boxing in his last two fights has continued to get better. But if you do look at Kyung Gong, even his last fight against Christian Quinones, he's backing up, he's backing up, he's backing up, he's waiting, he's behind the black line. Now he's up against the cage. He's getting hit by Quinones, big shots. And then he hits Quinones with a big one, drops him, and gets a submission win. So for me, I'm going to go with Kyung Gong in the matchup. No, please. Got Castaneda. He's on his prime. Maybe he is. Maybe he is. If he was, he'd be having bantamweight fights. But Matt, we'll move it forward. And we have Jared Gordon taking on Mark Madsen. Mark Madsen starts off in Europe. Goes out there and wins an Olympic medal at 31 years old in wrestling. A young man's game, some may say, but just like Kurt Angle, he's won an Olympic medal in it, brother. And when you look at a guy like Mark Madsen...
with a broken freaking neck.
No, he didn't. He's bringing that Greco-Roman style, switching it up against Killcliff FC's own Jared Gordon. So when you do consider a fight like this, I mean, two guys that, well, one guy that specializes, and he's continuing to get better in a discipline. One guy who is more well-rounded, and that's Jared Gordon. And I agree with you. It seems like every single time we make a Jared Gordon video, it's the same first 3 minutes. Boy, we wrote this guy off. But son of a gun, isn't he tough?
He hit one of those like mid 30-second wins, and that doesn't really happen all that often because Gordon was very hyped earlier on in his career. I know it was a really long time ago, so it's hard to remember. Didn't necessarily meet those expectations, and a lot of people wrote him off. But to his credit, like the great Geno Smith himself, he didn't write back. So for Jared Gordon, it has been nice to see him make those improvements after his initial push because I think his boxing has got quite a bit better. He's not such a sitting duck on the feet because he was so hittable early on in his career. He was getting blasted by some really big shots, and he wouldn't necessarily have the greatest level of recovery afterwards, but I do like the fact that he's mixed in the wrestling and the boxing a lot more to where it is more of a question mark when you're fighting a guy like Gordon because, like, remember the Carlos Diego Fajea fight where he just, like, gets his arm behind his back and hits him a lot? Like, there were some blimps on the radar, if you will, but I think Gordon now is a better fighter than he was back then.
Maybe in the 1930s there were some blimps on the radar. You said there were some blimps on the radar. It's some blimps on the radar.
Blimps didn't really work out after that famous one written down, did they?
Yikes. So when it does come down to this fight, again, for Jared Gordon, will he get smothered by the wrestling, as some might say? No, please. Madsen might ragdoll him, but I got Gordon.
And I gotta be honest, there is a little part of me that feels like Madsen could go out there and just wrestle, and get the win from it if Gordon doesn't, defend the first 2 or 3 all that well.
Yeah, the last time we did see Mark Madsen really dominate with the wrestling, well, there's 2 fights I can think of. Danilo Belluardo, who only lost in the UFC and was gone in short order. And then the Austin Hubbard fight at the start, but Hubbard rallied through round 1, round 2, and then in round 3, it was Hubbard winning that round, and then it was kind of like a Happy Trails type situation to go on and lose the Ultimate Fighter. So when it does come down to this one, the fans at Fight Night Picks, they do have Jared Gordon. 61% going with Jared Gordon in the matchup. I'm going to go with Gordon as well. You see Madsen with his training. They said throughout Fight Week and some of the interviews, he's going to have Firas Zahabi in his corner. You saw on his Instagram, we mentioned this at the start of the week, he was training a little bit in Morocco with Zahabi, Nasrat Haqparast to get Haqparast ready for his last fight. And Haqparast looked great against Landon Quinones. That was a... They didn't win fight of the night, but gosh darn it.
That was a great fight.
That should have won fight of the night. It was an awesome one. So for me, I do have Jared Gordon in this matchup, but I'm eager to see if the older man, Mark Madsen, getting close to 40, can add some more tricks to his game because he doesn't check leg kicks at all. And so we've seen him training at his native Denmark, working his Muay Thai with Damir Hadzovic. You'd think he'd work some of those kicks there, but his boxing actually has gotten better as his pro MMA career's gone on.
I'm really excited for this fight entertainment-wise because I think it will be pretty good. Jared Gordon, for the most part, has pretty exciting fights. There's a part of me that thinks Madsen might hold him up against the cage for a lot of it, though. And it might be a position where he's got the lower hips. He can just kind of strongman him up against the cage, if you will. And even if he doesn't go for a really high completion percentage, maybe he can still win moments that way just by smothering some of the fire if Gordon gets off with the boxing.
I would assume maybe a little bit more of the upper body, just that Greco-Roman. But we'll see what happens in this one. We'll move forward, Matt. This could be a fight of the night. I'm surprised people didn't vote for this one more. Nazim Sadykhov taking on Slava Borshchev. Matt, both these guys, they made weight. Both these guys, they were happy to flex the smile. They looked amped. and I'm amped for it, because if you get 100% of both of these men,
my goodness.
Slava Borshchev, I mean, you already know the pedigree, but if you don't, let's read it right here. We have he's a K1 champ. He's the top man. He's 18-2 in kickboxing. He was 2-0 as a pro boxer in 2019. Slava, he moves over to the States, team alpha male, working some of that wrestling. The takedown defense, it's bad. It's so bad. For Slava, he's 2-0 in the UFC. The 2 wins are performance bonuses. The 2 losses, he got taken down a combined 20 times. That's so bad. But when you look at a fight like this, Sadykhov, I mean, a WKA U.S. national champ in kickboxing, a junior Northeast judo champ, and he's also a master of sport in hand-to-hand combat and combat sambo. Sadykhov representing the U.S. and his parents' native Azerbaijan. You can see that on the UFC's website. So when it does come down to this matchup, I mean, both guys are strikers. Both guys can get it done in a litany of ways. Sadykhov will switch his stance a little bit. He'll go southpaw. He might come orthodox. You'll see Slava Borshchev fight out of that tricky sidewinder stance. So when it does come down to this one, Matt, I mean, for Sadykhov, he's already 2-0. For Sadykhov, you might have counted him out against the Terrence McKinney type and the like, but Sadykhov's been able to rally through both of his fights. The Evan Elder fight, he's down 2 rounds. He fights mean. He gets the cut. The TKO win in the 3rd. And his last time out, he loses the 1st round against McKinney, succumbs a little bit to the wrestling, overcomes in the 2nd round. And it was really tricky because he had that leg wrapped around the back arm, chicken wing to the rear naked really choke, where McKinney wasn't able to defend. So an awesome win there. I think this is a great fight, and when you're trying to make a pick, it could be a tough one too, so I'm eager to see who people have.
This is why I can't fault anybody for picking Borshchev, even though I do have Sadykhov in the matchup, because if you think it's a close fight, well, this stylistically is one of the more favorable fights Borshchev's going to get. He's going to have a dance partner who'll stand at range, probably try to eat a couple of his shots and counter over the top with his own. And if that's the case, Borshchev does have a phenomenal opportunity to win this fight. The power that this guy has for the weight class is insane. His takedown defense, insanely bad, but the power insanely unique, so everything balances itself out in the end. I do worry about him getting behind, though, if Sadykhov is able to land a lot in combination in the pocket, because if Sadykhov is landing some of those same side strikes, he'll throw a kick on the right side, a hook on the right side, switch stances. He will get kind of funky and unique with the way he throws his combinations. And if Borshchev does have to fight desperate as this fight goes on, I think it could open bigger counter shots for Sadykhov to land himself.
And I see it there from Bob Redneck saying, was just watching film, and Nazim kind of gets hard he gets hit very easily. Gets hard very easily. Kid doesn't need the rhino pills. Wow. I don't know what to do but notice that in his fights. Again, go back and watch Borshchev fighting Kenley St. Louis. He gets rocked, he gets dropped, he rallies back, he comes through. Both of these guys are hittable. They can have whatever kickboxing, Muay Thai background they might have. Both guys kickboxing, one guy judo. But if you do consider it, when they fight inside of an MMA cage, they're hittable. The takedown defense can falter. So to me, it is a really interesting one. Again, Chris Cruz saying, is Nazim a wrestler? I just brought up all of his, just scroll back like a minute and you'll see what I had said about it. But junior Northeast judo champ, and he's got that in his back pocket. If you do look at this one, I mean, Nazim, 68% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have him to get the win in this one. So I'm really eager to see who you guys have as you continue forward. But for me, I do have Nazim Sadykhov in the fight. I think he'll just be able to mix his martial arts a little bit. He's got the hometown advantage in this one as well. So I'm going to go with Nazim Sadykhov in the fight.
I also got him in this one. But again, I think stylistically, these guys are going to bring out the better of each other, especially on the feet. So it should be a great fight, but I do have Sadykhov.
Should be a big one. We move into the impromptu fight, Matt. Roosevelt Roberts. Missed weight. I mean, you accepted the fight at the start of the week on Monday night. You show up at 158 and look crestfallen to have done so. Missed weight by 2 pounds. Not good, but Roosevelt Roberts, he gets this fight. So, Roberts, 7-inch height advantage, 7-inch reach advantage. I'd like to hear from the folks once more to see who they have in this matchup. Because for Mateusz Rebecki, it's almost like a Darren Till load up. He loves to get into those shots. And I said, it's like 2003 Sammy Sosa cork bat. Because this guy goes to just effortlessly throw bombs until he tires himself out. He can't do it anymore. Rebecki, you know how good of a grappler he is. And in the video at the start of the week, I kind of went through and I did like what they do in Contender Series. I rated, okay, finesse striking, power striking, grappling, wrestling, and cardio. And when you look at both of these guys and you stack all their skills on a page, Rebecki, in the lion's share of those stat categories, he leads. The only one that he doesn't, possibly cardio, even though he's the 5-round guy, the FEN champ.
But he misses big.
At lightweight, and he was an 8-time title fighter over there with FEN. When you look at Roberts, I mean, Grappling, yeah. I mean, he's got a nice guillotine.
Exactly.
He's got some nice chokes when he's trying to defend takedowns. We'll see how that one plays out. Butter Toast saying Rebecki's line has become not even a good one. MMA Millionaire, this dude has like a foot on Mateusz. Yes, he does. He really does. But yeah, when I do consider this fight, again, I said at the start of the week, and I still maintain it even though Roberts missed weight. Roberts is one of those guys, once he finds himself in a groove, he's so steady. He's got those preset in the back of your mind combinations, subconscious. It's what, consciously conscient? He doesn't do that. He can stay unconsciously into his flow, and he can just go double jab, right cross. Double jab, right cross. No, I went to a business course, and they just kept saying those things, and it's all a bunch of bull hickey, but
I wasn't all that complimentary of Roberts' chances to win this fight at the start of the week.
Maybe with the chances of him winning the fight, but if you do look at it for Rebecki, if he tires himself out, if he doesn't get a finish, maybe round 1, round 2, he could be sitting out there. And he even hurt himself with those leg kicks before he finished Louis Rajabov.
I just look at it this way. Either Rebecki's going to win the fight doing the things he does really well, be it the big power strikes, the wrestling, or he's going to lose because he did too many of the things he does well. And I'd much rather rely on that than somebody who's going to have to resort to one of those defensive submissions. And I think that is going to be Roberts' maybe not best chance to win this fight, but if he gets Rebecki in a really uncomfortable one early, it might not make those takedowns as prevalent in his game, but I do still have Rebecki to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, Roosevelt Roberts' last fight, surprised that he's in the UFC, because you could argue that he won a split decision against Austin Hubbard. I thought that Roberts in the moment had won 2 of those rounds, going back and watching, and I still did, but it was a nothing burger of a fight. So that is why it's weird that he didn't have to take a fight or 2 in between. He gets this shot and then he misses weight. So it's a really bad look for Roberts in this spot. He's taking on an up-and-coming Mateusz Rebecki. If you do look at it at Fight Night Picks, 75% of the fans going with Rebecki to get the win. I do have him in this fight. I think the grappling can be a big difference maker. And again, we talked about it at the start. So if you haven't, checked the video out because we went really in detail with this fight and all of their recent fights that they've had. But you think of that Roberts fight against Jim Miller. Kick is thrown, little bit of a slip. Jim Miller jumps on top of him, and then Roberts ends up in a submission. Tries to slam himself out of an armbar, and as he's picking up Jim Miller, verbally taps. So, yeah, that was a tough one there. We'll move forward, Matt. We have the next matchup at strawweight. Baby Shark Tabatha Ricci taking on Lupita Godinez. If you saw my Twitter out there, I've got the career arc of Lupita Godinez, the former LFA champ, here in the graphic, but just a weird uppy down type of career so far. And Godinez, I mean, she's won her last number of fights. She's won, 3 in a row? She beat Cynthia Calvillo, Emily Ducati, and Elise Reed. And again, you probably saw the picture out there. I can't remember if it was Booger Beard or one of those guys that was out there, but the freeze frame of Lupita Godinez being turned all the way around as Elise Reed's falling all the way backwards. That happened in Godinez's last fight. She dropped her with a left hook and almost spun herself when she threw it. Reed goes down. It's something. It's one of those calls like that just will go on forever. Reed goes down, and then she ends up getting finished. So when you do look at this fight, Brad and KC was saying Loopy by decision. Long-time listener, first-time caller, perhaps. But when you look at this fight, I mean, Tabatha Ricci, she's got the Muay Thai in her back pocket. Her striking's gotten better being based in California. Callum Walsh, how's he doing? But when it comes to her grappling, that's where her bread gets buttered.
And I think on the match, you can make this really interesting, but I think both these fighters will have the advantage when they're in the top position. I think on the bottom it's going to be tough because both are such talented grapplers that I don't know if we're going to see a Hail Mary submission, right? It could happen. I've been wrong many times before. I'll be wrong many times again, but I just don't know if Ricci's going to be able to have such an advantage on the mat to where she can sweep Godinez, get on top, and then really starting to threaten with a lot of work. If that is the case, then she can very well win this fight. I think on the feet, though, Godinez's ability to throw boxing combinations in close is going to give her a bit of an edge, because if Ricci can't hit her with a big enough shot to keep her off of her, I do think that pressure is really going to bother Ricci and make it more difficult for her to make those decisions on the fly, and that's what it really comes down to in this matchup. Both fighters are pretty well rounded, though stylistically I would say there's a lot more overlap than there is uncommon between the two, but I do like Godinez for her ability to get some more of that work done on the inside.
Lord Nikon, Ricci doesn't really have any signature wins. Easily her best competition since her loss to Fiorot. I think her last fight, showed that she could beat a premier grappler, being Jillian Robertson. She didn't even really have to use the grappling. It was a lot of her striking that got it done in that one. So that was impressive to me. Apparently it wasn't to you. For me, I do think this is a good fight. I mean, Loopy Godinez, it's a combination. She can rip to the body. She has good offensive wrestling. Defensively, though, it can leave a little bit to be desired. And that's why this one, it's kind of like a fit for, like a glove-type fit when you do consider both of their styles. And every time I see Lupita Godinez training at Lobo Gym MMA, my heart breaks just a little bit more because she's just going back to Mexico. Back to Mexico, Matt. When we look at this one, 58% of the fans have Tabatha Ricci to get the win in this one. We've got a super chat there from Goler. I apologize. Are those Norway dollars?
I don't know what
NOK
Thank you very much, though. Very kind.
That's much appreciated. So thank you. I have to look and see what NOK is. But
we're gonna learn something new today, Craig.
For me, I do have Nokia. Finish. No, that's the Finnish.
Sorry,
on the NASDAQ. That's what Nokia.
You're the one who looked it up, not me.
Yeah, we'll keep looking into it. But yeah, in this one, I do have Loopy Godinez.
So do I. Should be a fun fight. This is the win that really justifies the step up in competition afterwards for both fighters, I would say.
It really does. I mean, top 15, the sights are set there. This is the feature prelim, Matt. Again.
And I like it, kind of.
We got amped for this one at the start of the week. We said this was one of the better fights that you're going to see on this card. Steve Erceg, his second fight in the UFC. His first one, he beats the 10th ranked David Dvorak. He is now ranked, is Erceg 15th in the division, so he slided away. He Art Garfunkeled it. Now he's taking on Alessandro Costa. And when you look at a guy like Costa, I know I was excited about him going on to Contender Series last year. He was my pick to get the win because we each made one pick per episode. And I had Costa. And you had Joe Pyfer to beat Diaz, and he did. So when you look at a guy like Costa, even though his fight against Martinetti, I was going to say on the show, but against Martinetti, he did get the win. It just wasn't all that impressive. It wasn't awe-inspiring. Now, next week, the Allen versus Craig card. I'm going to have jokes about that card, but put it this way. A lot of the fighters that are on that one are bad. They're terrible. And a lot of the fighters that are debuting had bad fights on the show. And one of them is a guy that I like a lot, in Caio Machado. He beat Kevin Zaflarski. It was an awful fight. Dana White wouldn't have signed him last year, but this year, we sign everybody. Winners, losers, people that fight to draws. We want you. We want all of you for pennies on the dollar. So when it comes to this one, I do like Alessandro Costa.
Yeah,
I like the fact that he's short, but he's got that big right hand. I like his takedowns. I think his grappling is lights out, and that's why I like Alessandro Costa in this fight, because Erceg's a little hittable, and he's really susceptible to the big power right hands of his opponents. But man, when you find Erceg always moving forward, once he finds his rhythm, his striking's very good. His grappling is the part of the game that probably nobody's going to talk about. So I think this is an awesome fight, and my heart's probably going to be in my throat the whole time because we're split on this one, and we both enjoy it a lot.
But I agree with everything you say, right? I do worry about Erceg walking into one of those big right hands from Costa. I worry about the speed of Costa, his ability to close the distance from the outside into the close range. But Erceg, he's just, I can't believe the Pound the Rock reference is going to come out right now.
What 2K was it?
2K12, I think, every time he plays the Raptors, Doris Burke would just bring up the fact that she talked to Coach Dwayne Casey about the fact that Dwayne Casey put a 10,000-pound boulder inside the Raptors locker room, and he said, hey, there's a story about an old stonemason back in the day, and it was how you can't break the stone after one hit, but if you keep on hitting that rock and keep on putting pressure on it, it will break one day. And I think Steve Erceg's going to have an opportunity to have a performance like that. I'm going to tweet out a gif of just like Dwayne Casey if he does win this fight, because I do think that pressure is going to be so important. Now, could he walk into some big shots based on that pressure? Yes, he very well could, but I do think eventually he's got underrated power himself, and I do think the defensive grappling is going to be good enough to where Costa doesn't just run away with it if he gets it on the mat.
69% of the fans might go with Steven Erceg to get the win. And I think, and I can see it over there in the comment section, Memphis Tiger, who is Dvorak beat? He had like a 16-fight win streak, guy. I mean, that's more impressive than anything any of us are ever going to do, unless David Dvorak's in the chat right now pumping his own tires. So for me, I do think that was a good win. I also think that David has kind of gotten beaten up in the last number of fights. So it's a little bit of both, but an awesome win at UFC 289 in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, for Steven Erceg. So Matt, we are split on this one. We will move it forward. This kicks off the pay-per-view portion. you gotta pay to watch Diego Lopez and his new salad battle a guy with a large dome and Pat Sabatini. Again, these are power pressure grapplers, and I don't know if we made this fight video weird like we did the one between Pichel and Bonfim that didn't even happen because one guy just couldn't make the weight at home. Just couldn't make it, so they canceled the fight. But I have Diego Lopez in this fight because I think he's a better striker than Pat Sabatini, more so than anything. I think both guys are lights out with their grappling, but I just like Lopez a little bit more with the striking.
And that's what you always worry about a Pat Sabatini fight. For as good as the strikes are, he doesn't really react all that well to getting hit. And I don't know if you know this, Craig, people get hit in the sport of MMA all the time. So it's not great when you do have that tendency to almost shell up and kind of avoid the damage. But I really thought Sabatini was making improvements on his striking before he did start to suffer these more recent losses. We saw the kicks be much more incorporated into his style. And I think it comes down to, hey, a Pat Sabatini, if you want to take me down off a kick, you can go right ahead. I have that kind of grappling. But you are right to bring up the fact that Lopez, for as good as the grappling is, I do think his striking is a little bit more complete too. But these guys both have those games to where if either one gets that top position, it could just be lights out for their opponent.
Yeah, I mean, this really does feel like me as a pop and popcorn fight. Throw the shirt on, why not mention it? But when you do look at this, I mean, for Pat Sabatini, the one loss to Damon Jackson, and all of a sudden, look at that, your chopped liver. And then you look at his performance against Lucas Almeida, and we have another Lucas from Brazil competing next week. Lucas Alexander, he's going to be taking an interesting fight on short notice against Jeka Saragi. You lose, but you're in the UFC, bud, because we take anybody in 2023. But Pat Sabatini looked amazing in that fight against Almeida. It was just rubber meeting the road, and he was able to keep the fight with his takedowns in his own world. So again, I do see it up there, and it's got to be one of the silliest things I've ever seen. Call of Duty Volk saying Diego was a flash in the pan. If he was a flash in the pan, then when he lost on Contender Series, he probably would have given up. But he didn't. He gets that loss to Movsarevloyev in a short notice debut. It was a close fight, around the outside, a lot of scrambles, and then he goes out there and just absolutely decimated our boy from the East Coast. Gavin Tucker, Samat, as Atlantic Canadians. Gavin, we hope you're doing well. But when we're trying to make a pick in this one, I do have Diego Lopez here.
And I agree with you. I think this is a great fight, though. This is a weird fight just because I feel like people are probably lower on Sabatini than they should be. I think he is still a pretty talented fighter. But stylistically, these guys do have so much overlap. This could be a fun fight no matter what happens in the cage, be it striking or grappling.
Branch above, what's going on? 69%, 68, 69, it keeps varying. Have Lopez to get the win in the matchup. All right, Matt. So we move into... This is one of the two, I guess I should say, fight of the night categories or picks that the fans had out there.
Like it.
You look at this one at lightweight, Benoit Saint-Denis, he just continues to win. You remember his Bonfim win? I certainly do. You remember his fight against the Green Mass, Nicolas Stutz? You probably thought that name wasn't coming up today, but you're darn tootin' it will. Benoit Saint-Denis has been on a mission since he lost that tough fight in a debut up a weight class to Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, who still wins fights in 2023. Amazing stuff there. So... if you do consider it, I mean, Saint-Denis, it was a draw. It was a draw, but he still wins in my mind.
That body kick was nice.
Rinat Fakhretdinov. So all that to say, Benoit Saint-Denis, you know that the grappling, those were kind of his beginnings.
Lights out.
In MMA, if you watch him fight with Brave, again, middleweight, welterweight, super lightweight, and lightweight experience has Benoit Saint-Denis, and he powerfully takes guys down to the mat. And I think the craziest part where you're really trying to bring things together on this card, when I was doing my research, I thought, okay, Benoit Saint-Denis, he's got 2 losses on his record. One's a no contest, and we kind of told you the crazy story about it at the start of the week, to Paweł Kiliak, one's to Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos. If you look at Paweł Kiliak, he's fought 2 guys. Record of 9-7-1. Not that impressive. He's fought 2 guys that are in the UFC now to this point. One of them being Benoit Saint-Denis. One, he had a finish win over Guram Kutataladze. I mean, listen. Has-been. You can't be a has-been if you never were. Paweł Kiliak. We're bringing your name up, bud. So when you do look at this one, the fans are kind of all over the place. Marcus Mustard loves the cross-sport references and the Browns. Any Browns analogies tonight? No.
Who do they play tomorrow?
They play a team that they lost badly to at the start of the year without Deshaun Watson. They lost to division rival and potential Super Bowl favorite, Baltimore Ravens.
I'm a little worried the Dolphins are playing the Raiders. And the Raiders, Max Crosby, if he hits Tua, I might start to cry immediately. I'm really excited for this fight, though. I can't stress that enough because I think Benoit Saint Denis is the better grappler, I would say, once the fight hits the mat. But I do think he's going to struggle with some of those wrestling exchanges, even though he is such a high-powered grappler. Because once he is able to get guys to the mat, he does do a really good job of not getting stuck in guard. He's a very active grappler from that point. And that's the spot where I think Frevola might struggle with. But it's going to be really difficult for him to get the fight into that position, I think, unless he's really able to mix up his strikes and his wrestling to the highest level, so it really confuses Frevola. Because Frevola does have kind of a game plan tailored to beating somebody like Saint Denis, right? You defend his takedowns, you force him to strike with you, and then once you are able to land that big shot, there's not many guys, at least as of late, who have been able to withstand it. I think it's been a really fun run for Matt Frevola, but I do think we will see the end of it today, unfortunately.
Frevola, Sadykhov, as well as the first man on the card, Denis Buzukja, all representing Longo and Weidman MMA. You got Dustin Smith making a case. I mean, going with the American on Veterans Day. Matt Frevola, lieutenant in the U.S. Army Reserve. Benoit Saint Denis was a 1st Marine Infantry paratrooper in the regiment of the French SAS. Matt, I've got the Poppy on today for Remembrance Day in Canada, which is on the same day as your Veterans Day in America. So, Matt, for me, I do have Benoit Saint Denis in this one. Both of us in agreement on that.
I think it's an awesome fight, though.
It is an awesome fight. It's going to be a lot of fun. The GOAT Ramus, much appreciated. Matt, we have a look at this fight. Jessica Andrade taking on Mackenzie Dern. When I read what the scoop was between both of these women and their reasons for competing, it made me think of a movie that I will quote right now, and it goes like this.
Does everyone lose at the end of it?
You know what's hard work? Going through a divorce. She's trying to get all my money now. She can have half of it. I don't give a The other half, hard work, mine. Sorry, some guys on their team are effing divorced. 3 guys there. Whose effing marriages are in the effing toilet? We're playing divorced guys. It was a speech between periods on Goon. Playing divorced men. When you look at this one, Matt, both of these ladies going through tricky situations in their personal lives, and that's got to be a giant distraction. But when you do look at it, Mackenzie Dern and the former champ Jessica Andrade, I mean, future Hall of Famer, it makes for an interesting fight. Now, I see it over there. We've got No Please saying Dern. We've got MMA millionaire Dern. Prince Vegeta's son is lukewarm. We've got a draw. So that now we're going way off the rails over there in the comments section. We'll have a look at Fight Night Picks. 74% of the fans going with Mackenzie Dern in this fight, Matt. And you know what I have to say? Pleasantly surprised. Both fighters look good on the scales.
They did.
And I say that to say Jessica Andrade looked good on the scales.
I have a big problem with this fight. I just don't think we're going to get the best version of both fighters in it, and that's why it's so hard to
Yeah,
play.
you think when their personal lives are going terribly?
No, that's why I agree 100%. I brought up the fact that Saint Denis and Frevola stylistically is going to make for a fun fight, right? Those guys are going to bring out the best versions of each other, and we're probably going to get the best versions of both those athletes. I just don't know if we're going to get that case in this matchup, and I am a little bit surprised to see people so heavily picking Mackenzie Dern. I know she's had the more recent run of success between these two fighters, because for Andrade, it has been a rough run as of late. These past 3 losses, it makes you worry that have we just hit the cliff? Like, has her athleticism just gotten to the point where she can't lift ladies up over her head, slam them into the ground and pound them for 5 rounds? Because at one point, that's what Andrade was doing to fighters. I think we are going to get a better version of Andrade just because Dern's striking is a little bit loose. I know she's improved her striking a lot since she initially came into the UFC, but she still can get hit on the feet. And I think if Andrade is able to land some bigger strikes, especially earlier on in the fight, it's going to make Dern uncomfortable enough to where she won't get into the pocket. And if that's the case, I don't know if she'll have the volume numbers at the end if she's not able to get a submission win to be able to win this fight on the scorecards.
Lord Nikon, Andrade has 3 straight finished losses, which is much more troubling than getting decision. If you look at her last 3 losses, of course, you're going to remember Andrade looking flat against Aaron Blanchfield at 125 after setting a single fight strike record against Lauren Murphy the fight before. It was in quick succession. It was on short notice. It was a week's notice. She was replacing Happy Trails, Tyler Santos in that main event against Blanchfield. Then she goes out against Yan Xiaonan. She's doing that jab, chase, and then she's out. She gets caught by a hook. She gets dropped. She gets finished, and Tatiana Suarez did what you thought she was going to do, and she was able to implement some of that wrestling. So again, 74% of the fans have Mackenzie Dern to get the win. I kind of think that Dern striking her last time out, though, again, she lost 1 round and had multiple 10-8s by multiple judges her last time out against Angela Hill in a 5-round atmosphere. I do think Andrade is going to get the win here. Now, have I picked Andrade in all 3 of her losses? No, I picked her in 2 of the 3. I didn't pick her to win in the Suarez fight, so I will go with Andrade here. But again, I said this at the start of the week, I'll say it again. You can Nelson Muntz if you want, if Dern gets the win. But again, Dern is favored. The fans have Dern. If Dern wins, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the entire world. So we move into our co-main event of the evening, Matt. Toss a like as we continue on through the video. Sergey Pavlovich taking on Tom Aspinall. Did Aspinall come off the couch? Kinda. I mean, if you look at it, Pavlovich was getting ready to serve as the backup in the main event. Seemed like they might need him. I mean, listen, John Jones is out. Dante Almeida, too tough a test in the wrestling, some would say. But no, would they make Miocic versus Pavlovich? They didn't want to do that. So they slapped the interim title here, and it's back to the Brock Lesnar days of the interim heavyweight championship. The last time the interim heavyweight championship was fought for?
Not that long ago.
UFC 265, Siddlegon versus Derek Lewis, where the French man went across to Houston, Texas, and beat the hometown man, Derek Lewis, handily. It was so sad. But Cyril Gahn's brother was in the cage, and he always gets so happy for his brother's fights. Coming from Boston, where French people apparently choose to live. So, Matt, when we look at this one, Tom Aspinall, the jiu-jitsu, the boxing, for Sergey Pavlovich, the boxing, the Greco-Roman wrestling that he pulls out of his back pocket in his lone fight that I've seen him do it, the Derevyanenko fight, his first pro fight that you can find out there on YouTube. Other than that, haven't seen much of it. Again, it's a body lock and just an absolute slam from Pavlovich, who ends up on top. And as I said, doesn't do the Jalton Almeida. Stop grabbing my wrist. I'm just going to rain down blows. That was Pavlovich in that fight. So I think this is going to be a great one. But for me, I have Tom Aspinall.
I do too, and the reason I have Tom Aspinall is both of these guys are phenomenal strikers, right? We've seen it from both of them, but they get it done in very different ways. Pavlovich's gonna march you down, land those big hooks. He does have a nice jab on the outside, but when he has his opponent hurt, he goes for the finish, and there's really nobody who can
Prince Vegeta's son. Boston does smell like that. In the subways and at Fenway.
But Pavlovich is one of these fighters where if you're up against the cage, he can finish you at any single point in the fight, no matter what. And I do think the footwork of Aspinall is going to be a really key factor in this matchup, because if he can use the footwork to then land the jab down the middle to keep Pavlovich off him, start setting up some of the bigger straight shots that we know he can land, then I do think Aspinall has the more complete striking game, even though the power between these guys I wouldn't even say is comparable. Like Pavlovich,
which is wild.
It is wild, because exactly, like Aspinall does hit pretty hard himself, but Pavlovich, I think right now is probably the most heavy-handed heavyweight we have in the division. You know, Derek Lewis hits pretty hard, but Pavlovich is a lot more consistent with it, at least. But I agree with you in the end. I do have Tom Aspinall. I do worry a little bit if he is on the back foot. And if we do see some of those takedowns out of Pavlovich, that would be kind of wild to see him on top of Aspinall trying to rain down ground and pound, because I don't know if he's going to have a ton of success with just the pure grappling of a guy like Aspinall. If he does find himself just stuck in the guard, I think there could be a difficult position. But if he can land some big shots on Aspinall's flat on his back, it could completely change the complexion of this fight.
Chris Cruz saying, bro, Pav is going to run Tom down. Yeah, he very well could. Again, both these guys impromptu meeting each other. You'd think Tom Aspinall would have been in the gym getting ready, but when you do consider this one, somebody 6-1 has to end. And when you're talking about cardio, if you haven't seen it, I mean, for Tom Aspinall, the last time he went to his second round was against Łukasz Porobiec back in 2016. For Sergey Pavlovich, it was with Fight Nights Global in 2017. So we haven't seen it in years and years and years and years. Now, have both guys gotten ready for 5-round UFC fights? Yeah, they have. And we'll see how this one plays out. If you look at Fight Night picks for the total votes in this one, it wouldn't surprise me if Pavlovich is favored. 57% going with Pavlovich to win. You can find that in our story. I've seen Aspinall drop too many times. Where? Call of Duty vlogs, bud. You got to step the comment game up. Matt, we'll look at our main event. Yuri Prochazka taking on Alex Pereira. 54% of you over there in the chat going with Pereira. We have differed on some of these fights. I don't have Pereira, but if you do consider this one, I mean, Alex, his last time out, a close fight against Jan Blachowicz. Now he gets to try and win that fourth belt in 2 sports. In 2 divisions. It's crazy. And when you look at it for Yuri, gets to come back after he became the champ. UFC 275, an all-timer against Glover Teixeira for title fights. And Matt, while it might not be like a legacy of Gray Maynard and Frankie Edgar, Yuri Prochazka looking to build that base. Gray Maynard, he just opened a gym called Prime Combat. And Charles Johnson fights out of that gym, who's fighting next week against Rafael Esteban.
I'm happy to hear he's doing well.
Good stuff there. So I know we're all amped for this fight.
It's a weird fight, and this is why I have Alex as my pick. I brought up the hitability of Yuri earlier on in the week because it does take him a little while to settle into the fight. He will get hit by some shots before he's really able to settle down and land the crazy combinations he is able to land.
Ben M with that super chat. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Ben M.
Enjoy the fights from Dallas, Texas. You think he's a big Mavs fan?
Hopefully.
Big Dwight Powell fan, Canadian. All right,
They
Matt,
hate
continue.
Dwight Powell down there.
Yeah.
My point is, if Yuri always has sort of difficult timing, let's call it, earlier on in fights that can get him hit, with the time off, I worry that time's going to be a little bit longer. And every minute that goes by that Alex has the confidence to move forward, land his combinations, start landing kicks in with his boxing as well, I think it just gives him a much better chance to win this fight. Yuri got that dog in him. Both these guys do. I think that's fair to say, to be completely honest. But Yuri is one of these fighters who can go through hell, get out on the other side, and look really good somehow. So if he is able to withstand some of those early flurries of Pereira, I wouldn't be surprised if he is able to get the finish in the 4th or 5th round, because he does have that kind of a style to his game. But if he's just getting hit, especially early on in the fight, I worry about what version of Yuri we are going to get in some of those later rounds.
Super chatter Ben M saying go Mavs, so that one is good. Matt, Craig Hart as well,
Derek
much
Lively.
appreciated. So when it does come down to this one, again, Yuri Prochazka, Alex Pereira, the votes have been close all through the week. They've been about 55 to 45 out there. And again, I know that we split on this one. When you look at Alex Pereira, though, what can slow down the timing and the weird movement? It's those leg kicks, and he has some of the best in the game. So look out for that. I'm sure Joe Rogan is going to be all over that. Maybe he'll even bring up some of his own taekwondo
I didn't
kicks.
think he looked a lot smaller than Yuri either. Now, maybe by today, when they both rehydrate completely, Yuri is going to have a significant size advantage, but I didn't think Alex looked as undersized as I initially thought he was going to.
Well, Matt, an interesting fight, as we had said. Yeah, the Arlovsky fight did go into the second round. My bad, but it has been a while. Yeah, so both of us going with Prochazka. A lot have tuned in. The likes, they've come flooding in. You guys have been great over there in the chat. We'll stack the deck once more and chat about these fights with you. We will have a look. And Matt, the first fight on the card, Jamall Emmers, missed weight, taking on Dennis Buzukja. Still have Emmers. Not that confident anymore.
Yeah, throw up the red flags, but I do have Emmers.
All right, Matt. The next matchup, we have Joshua Van taking on Kevin Borjas. Borjas shocked the world getting that win over Contender Series. He was a big underdog. He got the win there. It would surprise me if he won today. So I do have Joshua Van. And the super chat from Chris Cruz.
Thank you.
Much appreciated, Chris Cruz.
I've got Joshua Van. Thank you, Chris Cruz.
All right. Common Rider and a lot of talk about the kickboxing not being sold on it. Is it Cesar Almeida? He fights next weekend against Christian Leroy Duncan, CLD. Cesar, he fought Alex Pereira 3 times. He beat him 1 time.
I saw people get mad that Daniel Cormier said it's harder to win an Olympic gold medal than it is to win a Glory kickboxing title. I didn't think that was a controversial take.
I didn't either. Matt, we'll have a look. The next matchup, Castaneda taking on Kyung. I don't do this like I used to. I used to do it every now and again. Now I never do it, because when I do it, I get it wrong. I'm switching the pick, and I'm going Kyung in this matchup.
I understand why you're switching the pick, but I still have Castaneda.
All right, Matt. The next matchup, we have a big timer. It's Jared Gordon taking on an Olympian, Mark Madsen. I have Jared Gordon here.
I have Jared Gordon, but if Mark Madsen's able to hold him up against the cage and out-wrestle him, I wouldn't be surprised with a win.
All right, the next one, Sadykhov taking on Borshchev, going with Sadykhov.
I've also got Sadykhov, but this is a great fight. It's one of those surprise, like, ooh, this could easily win fight of the night fights.
All right, then we have Rebecki taking on Roberts, going with Rebecki.
I also have Rebecki. It's going to be a tough fight for Roberts, I think.
Jack Bloss saying you got to go with the Black Rooster. I don't have to do anything. Tabatha Ricci is taking on Lupita Godinez. Going with Godinez in the fight.
I'll go with Loopy in this matchup. If Ricci gets on top of her and submits her, I wouldn't be surprised by that. She is that good of a grappler. It's just, I think that position's going to be hard to come by.
All right, Matt. Erceg taking on Costa. Another underdog. Alessandro Costa in this one.
I'll take Erceg. Should be a fun fight.
All right, Matt. The next one, we have Diego Lopez, Pat Sabatini. Throw your money down and pay to watch Diego Lopez fight Pat Sabatini in New York City, is what the UFC is saying. I'm going with Diego Lopez.
I also have Diego Lopez.
All right, Matt. The next one, Frivola taking on Benoit Saint-Denis, the God of War. Matt, the Dieu de Guerre. You got him? I got him.
I do, but Matt Frivola is going to have a huge pop, and that's going to be fun to see.
He's going to get a big pop. Will he be drinking pop? If so, orange soda, or would you call it orange pop? What would you say on a train?
Well, I would say orange pop on a train, of course, and then get looked at like I was a 12-foot tall alien man, so...
Well, I think a 50-year-old guy in a lunch cab, he looked at you less like you were an alien and more like you were a small child.
He wanted to fight me, I thought.
He did want to fight you. Matt, we have Pavlovich taking on Aspinall. Great question from Mr. Big Facts. Why did UFC go woke? I don't know, man. You're in the wrong place for that question.
I have Tom Aspinall.
I do have Tom Aspinall as well. And in the main event, Matt, Prochazka's taking on Alex Pereira. I'm going with Yuri Prochazka in this one. Again, next weekend's fights, I've got a whole, like almost like a monologue of an intro queued up for them. because they are what they are. And I mean, I'll show the video here. There are the fights. Brendan Allen's taking on Paul Craig. I'm sure we'll have a joke about it.
Yeah, try to sell the card named after
names.
you, maybe, you know?
Yeah. No, I don't have to, because we're going to be gone soon, and the fights absolutely blow. There's 17 Dana White's Contender Series fighters on that card. There's 4 ranked fighters in 14 fights.
And if you don't know,
4 ranked fighters out of 28 total fighters. It's awful. It's awful. And to compound things, it's at the UFC's Apex. So get excited about that one, everybody. But we'll be back for that. We'll tape those videos
that's
tomorrow.
next week. Let's get excited for this great pay-per-view.
Yeah,
you know?
that's where I was going with it. I'm not amped about next week. It is what it is. But with this card, I actually am really excited about it. Van Borjas, it'll be an interesting one to find where the prospects kind of seed in the lower half of the flyweight division, but overall a lot to get excited about this weekend.
I think it's a phenomenal card. I'm really excited with the fact that we did get such a great replacement fight between Pavlovich and Aspinall, because when there is such a hyped up fight like the Jones versus Stipe fight, you always feel like there's going to be such a big letdown with what you're going to get. But I'm still really excited for this new interim title fight, and I think the winner of that does kind of justify themselves as the best fighter in the division, at least for right now. Even if they don't go and unify the belt with Stipe or John Jones, whoever ultimately does win that fight, I still think the winner of this is like the defined number 1 guy in the division.
It should be a big one. Again, make sure you check out those videos coming up next week. You got a little bit to get excited about at the start, or the opening of that card for sure. You can always find us at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.